Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Phil and welcome to Grounded, the series which looks at airlines of yesteryear. This episode will take a look at Orion Airways. The origins of Orion go back to 1955 with the formation of Horizon Midlands, set up in partnership with the already established Horizon Holiday Group, which had pioneered package holidays for the masses organised by Vladimir Riots. Horizon Holiday Group would eventually own 58% of Horizon Midlands, and following financial trouble in the 1970s would be taken over by Clarkson's Holidays. When Court Line took the dubious honour in 1974 of becoming the largest UK airline failure, Clarkson's would go down with it. However, Horizon Midlands would be saved by some quick thinking. Several local authorities in the Midlands were persuaded to buy a stake in the travel firm and thus free it from being dragged into oblivion along with Clarkson's. Both East Midlands Airport and Birmingham Airport were at the time owned by a consortium of local authorities and were heavily dependent on holiday traffic. Saving the area's largest travel company was a logical step to keep the airports in business. Horizon Midlands, now free from Clarkson's, developed its product through the 1970s, focusing on quality, and would soon repair a reputation tarnished by the events of 1974. By 1978, the company had expanded beyond the Midlands and was now the third largest tour operator in the country. It rebranded as Horizon Travel to reflect this. Horizon had been using a number of third-party airlines to operate charter flights on their behalf and were particularly reliant on Britannia Airways. Britannia, however, was owned by a rival travel company, Thomson, and had started to be a little difficult with Horizon, who began to look at their options. Looking away from Britannia, Horizon noted that there was less capacity with existing charter airlines. This was mainly due to a number of them becoming closely affiliated with other travel companies or being brought in-house altogether. Having reviewed the situation, Horizon decided to form its own airline. The company had had a number of successful years behind it and had built up a decent cash reserve, so it was in a position to do things for itself. By having its own airline, it would of course be able to have complete control of everything from scheduling to the onboard product. This was especially important as Horizon could boost its reputation, as it wouldn't need to use a carrier such as Dan Air, which at the time was known as Dan Dare. Summerite Limited was founded in October 1978 as the plan for the airline began to take shape. Apparently, the company held a staff competition to come up with a name for the airline. The winning name was Orion, formed from removing the H and the Z from Horizon. Orion Airways would become the company's official name from January 1980. Orion would be headquartered at Castle Donington on the grounds of East Midlands Airport and would choose the popular Boeing 737-200 to form the backbone of their fleet, with their first aircraft being delivered in early February. A second was delivered towards the end of the month, with a third arriving in March just in time for the airline to begin commercial operations. One more 737 would be delivered a few weeks later in April, taking the Orion fleet to 4 aircraft. The Orion Airways livery was rather striking and certainly different to anything else on show, meaning an Orion aircraft would be instantly recognisable at busy holiday airports. It consisted of a white upper fuselage with 3 cheat lines running the length of the aircraft. Each was a different colour, brown, orange and yellow, with a silver polished belly, which seemed synonymous with the 737-200 at the time, though this would later be painted white. The company logo, a stylised O, would feature prominently on the brown tail. It was all very 70s, but smart nonetheless. Initially, Orion would operate flights from East Midlands Airport, London Gatwick and Manchester, with destinations including Spain, Malta, the Canary Islands, Italy and the Greek islands. While one of the 737s would leave the fleet in early 1981, a further 3 more would be added, including GBH-VI, which was the 737th 737 of the production line. If the rumours are true, a number of other airlines tried to persuade Orion to swap places so they could have the prestigious number. Despite what appeared to be rapid expansion, Orion were actually very cautious in their approach, opting not to pay out big dividends but instead retain profits to help develop the company. 1982 would see just one 737 join the fleet. However, the airline became the first non-US launch customer for the Boeing 737-300 when it placed an order for 5 aircraft and an undisclosed number of options that June. 1983 would see the introduction of 3 more 737s, although one of these was just a summer lease from Air Belgium and spent the summer sporting a hybrid livery. In 1984, Orion would operate a fleet of 10 Boeing 737s to more than 35 destinations from 19 airports across the United Kingdom. Whilst having bases at East Midlands, Manchester, Gatwick and Luton, Orion would also fly from Newcastle, Bristol, Cardiff, Liverpool, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Bournemouth and Leeds Bradford. A lot of these flights involved W patterns, where the aircraft would depart from a UK base bound for an overseas destination, where it would then fly to a regional UK airport and then do the same again in reverse. This was and is a common way of serving one destination from multiple UK departure points. Orion, however, was one of a handful of airlines which would use its own light aircraft to transfer crew around the UK. The airline even had a Cessna 404 twin prop that was even sporting a variation of the company livery. January 29, 1985 would see the arrival of Orion's first Boeing 737-300, the very same day that the UK authorities granted certification for the type. 3 more would arrive in March, while during the course of the year 3 of the older 200 series aircraft were withdrawn. Orion operated 9 aircraft through the year and made a profit of over $2.2 million, down from just over $3 million the year before. 1986 would see the formation of Orion Flight Training Limited, a joint venture between Orion and Singer Link Miles Limited. The latter had been formed via a merger of Miles Electronics, the largest producer of flight simulators, and the Link division of Singer General Precision in the US, the very Singer responsible for the sewing machines. Orion had acquired and installed a new 737 simulator in 1985, and this new partnership would see the introduction of a second simulator in 1987. 1986 would be the first year where the fleet didn't grow, with the airline operating a total of 2 737-200s and 4 737-300s. The 2 200s would leave the fleet in November, as would one of the new 300 series aircraft. Orion would make a post-tax profit of over £13.8 million, which was reduced to around £10.8 million after dividends had been paid. This figure was a massive jump up from the year before and was due to the release of over £9 million in deferred tax rather than a massive increase in business. Orion didn't just operate flights exclusively for Horizon and its associated brands, they would also bulk sell seats to other tour operators. One of these was the Owners Abroad Group, a company which had originally started out specialising in overseas villas and expanding into its own tour operations. By 1987, Owners Abroad would launch its own airline, meaning it no longer relied on Orion as much. That airline would be Air 2000. It wasn't all doom and gloom for Orion, however, as they stepped it up a notch and entered the world of wide-body jets. The airline acquired 2 Airbus A300 B4-2 aircraft, both second-hand from Lufthansa. The first one arrived in April and was such an event it made the local TV news. Of course, I'm unable to show the clip due to copyright. The Orion livery looked smart on the 737, but boy did it look even better on the A300. The second one would arrive in May and was pressed straight into service despite wearing a basic Lufthansa livery with Orion titles. The introduction of the A300 allowed a large increase in capacity over the smaller 737, as they had over 120 more seats. One A300 would be based at Manchester with the other at Gatwick. These would be swapped each week as Dan Air would take care of their maintenance down south. 1987 was a turning point for Orion. The introduction of the A300 was a costly one, and the company made a loss of around £8 million. At the same time, Thomson was fighting a battle with Intersun and a fare war loomed. In the past, Horizon had actively avoided discounting holidays, even going as far as charging more than the competition. This was perhaps due to its predecessor, Clarkson's, selling holidays at below-cost prices it sold its way to bankruptcy. Whatever path Horizon chose, be it discounting or not discounting, the higher-ups knew they needed some financial backing. Bass plc, one of the oldest companies in the United Kingdom and more widely known as a brewery, entered discussions with Horizon. Bass was more than a brewery. It owned over 7,300 pubs and food and drink outlets in Britain alone. It also owned Coral Racing, a retail bookies, bingo halls, a hotel chain, insurance companies and even a stake in Yorkshire Television. Actually, Bass was huge. I hadn't realised how big until researching this episode. Needless to say, Bass was more than able to provide Horizon with the strong backing it would need to survive a fare war against Thomson and Intersun. Both Bass and Horizon had already been working together since the mid-1980s when they formed Bass Horizon Hotels, a joint venture which operated a small chain of hotels in Spain which would predominantly be used by Horizon holidaymakers. At that time, Bass had acquired a 25.6% stake in Horizon Travel. What Horizon hadn't counted on was Bass now acquiring them outright in 1987. Surely this would be a successful partnership. Now backed by one of the country's largest and richest companies, Horizon would be able to grow and become a travel juggernaut. The seeds had already been sown. Orion Airways had established a reputation for excellence, reliable and friendly service. Horizon's Holiday Club International was the leading club-style holiday company in the UK, and Horizon Holidays itself was nearing the 1 million annual passenger mark. 1988 would see numerous changes at both Orion and Horizon. The regional flying had mostly stopped, and the airline had started to offer some scheduled services. There were different days back then. An airline could operate charter routes easily enough, but if it wanted to operate a scheduled flight, it would need the licenses to be granted by the origin and destination countries. Orion would offer scheduled flights from Manchester, Birmingham and East Midlands to Palma, Alicante and Ibiza from the start of summer 1988. The airline would also operate a scheduled service between Gatwick and Almeria and East Midlands and Malaga. Orion would take delivery of 3 more Boeing 737-300s ahead of the summer season, with things looking up. Unfortunately, behind the scenes, things were conspiring against the airline. BAS had decided it didn't want to continue ownership of Horizon. To quote their chairman in the 1988 BAS annual report, it had been intended to use these businesses as a small platform to launch quality holidays. However, it became increasingly clear during the year that the objective would be very expensive in terms of revenue investment and take longer to achieve than anticipated because of problems beyond our control. I genuinely don't know what problems the company encountered. While the chairman left Horizon, that was part of the takeover agreement to install someone from BAS. The managing director retired but stuck on to the board for a little while, but in theory it was business as usual. According to sources, BAS didn't seem to know what to do with Horizon. Aside from the financial security, they didn't really bring anything new to the company. It seems that since Horizon clearly wasn't going to be a simple turnkey operation with big profits, they decided to get out and started looking at ways of offloading the company. BAS approached both Thomson and ILG, the parent company of Intersun, as both were interested in acquiring Horizon. ILG, as the second largest tour operator, were very keen on a deal. However, it was Thomson who won out, as they had the cash on hand to seal a deal, whereas ILG did not. Thomson paid £75 million to acquire Horizon Travel. Adjusted for inflation, that works out at nearly £203 million. The deal was completed on August 17, 1988, with both Horizon Travel and Orion coming under the control of Thomson. Thomson now had 2 airlines, almost identical, both charter airlines and both operating similar aircraft types on similar routes. A logical option would be to merge them. Britannia was the oldest UK charter airline, though it was previously named Euravia, but Orion had a better reputation. In a move that would be repeated over 2 decades later, Britannia won out, with the smaller partner being absorbed into it. Orion would continue to operate normally until the 25th of January 1989, when Britannia would take operational control of the Orion fleet. Shortly afterwards, a small number of aircraft were transferred to Britannia, while others were leased out or sold on. The Orion brand would be quickly replaced by that of Britannia and disappear into history. An unfortunate twist in the tale is what happened next to Horizon. To quote the former Horizon managing director Ken Franklin, "I was still on the Horizon board and gave Thomson lots of information on areas of the company it needed to retain, but I was devastated when it emerged that Thomson took us over just to close us down. It paid an enormous amount to take Horizon off BAS, but then Thomson destroyed it." It was clear that Thomson simply wanted to keep Horizon out of the hands of ILG and Intersun. Ironically, it might not have had to act so rash, as a little over 2 years later ILG collapsed spectacularly. There is no "so what went wrong" type analysis in this story. Orion were a very reputable and successful airline, alongside a very reputable travel company, which if left to their own devices might have been okay. It's BAS and Thomson who are the villains of the story. BAS were quick to invest and acquire the company, but then bolted and offloaded it within 12 months as it wasn't a magic money tree. Thomson acquired it simply to keep it out of competition's hands. It's a shame too, as it seems lots of folks have happy memories of Orion, either travelling with them or working for them, but these days the only mention of Orion is that damn retro logo. So I've not done any analysis. Am I at least going to come out of a twist or two? Well, yeah, a few actually. In 1989, Orion would operate a Boeing 747 on various flights out of the UK. This was, however, a Ryanair from the USA. They were primarily a cargo airline, however they did operate some charter flights. Coincidentally, Orion USA lasted roughly the same number of years as Orion UK. Their 747 was brought to the UK to operate some flights for another unrelated tour operator and was actually leased in from Pan Am. The first 737-300 to be delivered outside the USA, GBLKB, was transferred to Britannia in 1989 and would stick around until 1993 when it was sold to Morris Air. When Morris Air was acquired by Southwest in 1994, the aircraft stuck around and operated for Southwest until the 5th of March 2000, when it overran the runway at Burbank Airport and was damaged beyond economical repair. Bass would end up acquiring Holiday Inn from the Holiday Corporation, where they paid $125 million to the shareholders and assumed $2.1 billion in debt. They didn't rush to offload them though, like they did with Horizon. Bass would be split up in the late 90s. The hotel side would eventually become IHG, or Intercontinental Hotels Group, and the brewery side would be taken over by Interbrew around the year 2000 and eventually disappear into AB InBev. Britannia, under the ownership of Thomson, would maintain the number one position in the UK, eventually becoming a huge part of the TUI organisation. Britannia's rather smart and iconic livery was replaced by a bland baby blue livery with horrid red billboard titles as the airline was renamed Thomson Fly. First Choice, formerly owned as Abroad, would merge with Thomson in 2007. First Choice Airways, formerly known as Air 2000, would be merged into the former Britannia in 2008, becoming Thomson Airways, eventually becoming TUI Airways in 2017. Despite being merged into Britannia in 1989, Orion Airways still existed, mainly because of contractual paperwork regarding aircraft that Orion had leased out over the winter. It would continue to exist as a holding company until it was finally dissolved on the 6th of February 2018, nearly 20 years after the company had been taken over. With regards to Orion, a number of former higher-ups would go on to form the UK division of a Belgian airline, Trans-European Airways. The parent company had numerous financial problems and collapsed in September 1991, with TEA UK folding shortly afterwards. The management were undeterred, however, and within months established Excalibur Airways. Excalibur were almost an Orion Mark II. They established a reputation as a reliable airline with great service, only to end up taken over by a company that didn't know what to do with it. We've almost gone full circle too. Excalibur Airways was the first airline I covered back in episode 1 of this series, so if you haven't checked it out, then here's the link. If you've seen it already, then go and check it out again, because I really need the views. Until next time, thanks for watching.